All right. What's going on, everyone? I think we are live now. So this should be a very interesting live stream. I think this will be of great interest to a lot of people. I'm already getting DMs from journalists about Milady and stuff like this. Obviously, it's a hot topic right now, so we're gonna try to get to the bottom of all of this. What we're doing today is this. A few weeks ago, I published a thesis about the Milady Maker NFT set. At that time, it was around April 1st. I bought a Milady, and I explained the reason that I was interested in it. The Milady Maker NFT set, as far as I could tell, was one of the first truly countercultural forces in crypto that I encountered. It was the first art project in the NFT space where it seemed to be genuinely and authentically coming from a place that's not the GM wag me, we're going to make it, we're all going to get rich and be happy, roses and rainbows worldview that has been so dominant in the NFT space for many months now, and which I frankly find rather saccharine and artificial and uncompelling. When the Milady Maker set hit, I looked into their culture, and it was like really pretty schizoid. It was like it was dangerous. People were kind of embracing crazy things. It was this really seemingly unhinged, but for that reason, kind of authentic and organic groundswell of dangerous, ungovernable, artistic, creative energy coming up from the internet. It had connotations of something like 4chan. It struck me as particularly authentic and countercultural. And I published that thesis. I talked about that. I explained why I thought that was interesting and somewhat counter-narrative to everything that had been going on in crypto until then. And so that was why I was interested in it. I explained that. And then they kind of took off. The price of Milady's increased. The floor price, I think, got as high as 2 or 3 ETH. And then what happened was about a week ago, one of the founders of the Remilia Corporation stepped down and basically said it was because that they played an active role in an old notorious Twitter account known as Mia, also known as the BPD God. And it basically, this person, the founder of Remilia, or one of the founders, Charlotte Fang, basically said that they were trying to protect the Milady Maker project. They didn't want their past Twitter activity that's controversial to affect the Milady Maker project and the larger integrity and trajectory of the Milady egregore, if you will. And so when Charlotte Fang stepped down, kind of taking some responsibility for having participated in controversial Twitter accounts in the past, some Twitter crypto influencers took that as an opportunity to basically can't try to cancel Milady. And so a few people did some research threads basically and drew the links between Milady and Remilia Corporation. Remilia Corporation is the kind of founding entity of the Milady NFT set, and this old infamous account known as Mia and the community around Mia, the BPD God. Okay, and so that basically tanked the price of Milady. This was just a few days ago. Basically, the price went from around 2 to 3 ETH all the way down to now. I think the floor price of Milady is like 0.3 ETH. Okay. And so that's a quick TLDR, a quick summary of what's happened. But what we're going to try to get to the bottom of is what is really going on and what is the truth of the matter, because it's very complicated. It's actually much more nuanced and more complicated than I think anyone out there currently really understands. The current narrative that is now the normie accepted standard narrative, like I'm getting text messages from friends of mine saying this is what most people, what most normies right now currently think from what they've heard on Twitter and on the internet, is basically that it turns out people believe the Milady Maker NFT set was made by literally a Nazi pro-anorexia suicide cult, and that this whole Milady thing is basically an evil, sinister scheme of Nazi pro-anorexia, suicide instigators. Okay, so this is the current hot meme. This is the standard narrative that it seems like is competing to take hold right now. I know enough about the internet underground to know that the truth is more complicated. I don't know exactly what the truth is, which is why I've invited today onto the live stream a handful of more or less random Milady avatars, basically, that I found on Twitter, to just try to get to the bottom of it. So I personally don't think that this standard narrative I just gave it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't really add up, basically, but I don't know exactly what the true narrative is. I'm going to try to get to the bottom of it today with a handful of Miladies that I brought on the stream, who I'm going to bring on in just a second. They are waiting in the wings. I just wanted to set the scene. I wanted to explain the TLDR of what most people are hearing and what the narrative that is emerging. I'm going to explain some wrinkles and nuances in that story that I'm aware of, and we're basically just going to try to, over the next hour or so, we're going to try to basically lay out in one place, in one episode, pretty much everything you need to know about what is real and what is not real when it comes to the Milady Maker NFT set and this swirling of rumors and allegations around it. Okay, so I don't have any agenda here. I do own, I personally own 2 Miladies. Okay, yeah, and I have a little syndicate, and the syndicate owns currently 1 Milady. So that's full disclosure of my stake here. Ultimately, I'm just interested in the story. I'm interested in figuring out what really happened, because I know enough about Mia and the past to know that the normie narrative right now is missing a lot of relevant details. So I wanted to take this as an opportunity to use my podcast to try to set a lot of things straight and get to the bottom of it with, a little hive mind of other people who certainly have different perspectives and different details. Okay. So yeah, without further ado, that's basically the setup there. That's what we're going to be talking about today. I am going to bring onto the stage four accounts that I've selected more or less randomly from the Milady Twitter sphere. So let me go ahead and do that. So in no particular order, no need to introduce people because whatever, I just want to jump right into it. I thought the most interesting place to start would be to just ask you all, because you're people who rep Milady, you all rock the Milady avatar on Twitter. I don't know any of you very much at all from before, like finding you in this context and inviting you onto the show, just because I took a random sample basically of Miladies, more or less. Not totally random, because it's people, in my Twitter sphere. Obviously, how else would I encounter them? But other than that, it's more or less random. So I want to start with just the question of, what does Milady actually represent to you? What does Milady mean? Just what is the brand? What is the concept? To the degree that you like Milady and have bought a Milady or more, and you rock the avatar and you like it and identify with it, just what is it to you? What does it mean to you? Why do you like it? I just would love to start by setting the scene there. So let's just go in order. Addy, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, I suppose at the root, everyone kind of bought into the Milady package early because it was just so countercultural to every NFT project that has existed before. I've been in the NFT space for a while. I'm an engineer. I've built quite a few products in the space, and there was nothing like the energy that was seen because before, and you've said this all, but it was just the culture was WAGMI. It was like basically bag holding and pushing bags, right? And I think like the apes are the prime example of this, right? It's kind of the worst case of like this end of this like just excess consumerism. These things cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Nobody really likes them. Nobody appreciates them except the people who hold them. But you get Twitter followers because you hold them. And Miladies were just so counter to everything. Like from very early on, people were trying to crash the floor price. People were just doing just everything that was just not done within the crypto space before. And I think most people were just intrigued by that, and it happened to catch the attention of a lot of people who, just it gave the impression of the early Wild West of crypto, and people just love that. And I know a lot of very powerful, high up people in crypto who, knew Milady and thought it was just an interesting thing, and it was expressing what everyone was feeling, right? Because again, nobody loves the apes. I'm sorry, I'm sure there's some ape bag holders listening. I was at once, but not anymore.
Okay, young Calibri, do you have anything to add to that?
Not in particular, but it's really unlike anything else, and even just aesthetically, without any kind of meta narrative, added onto it, it's a completely unique approach to the art form. I think, art form, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
It's like nothing else. Even just looking at it, you don't have to like read anything about it. You just see it and it stands out.
I guess for people who will listen to this on the podcast audio feed later, if you've never seen a Milady, the characteristic image is what they call a neo-chibi aesthetic. So it's like these tiny, kind of androgynous. I guess they're kind of effeminate, but some of them kind of look more or less like boys. Some of them look more or less like girls. But it's like these little, very round-headed neo-chibi characters, kind of anime-esque, and they have huge eyes, basically. That's it's as best as I can describe it. LB Dobis, do you have anything to add to this?
Uh, yeah, so I could share maybe like how I got into
Okay.
Milady because I think it's maybe a little bit different. Because
Mm.
for disclosure, I've never bought a Milady. Actually, I learned about Milady IRL. I was not an online person whatsoever. Um, but the way that I decided to engage with Milady was to right-click Milady and just make it my profile picture. Like I just entered the whole world that way. I was not on crypto Twitter. I wasn't on Twitter at all. Um, and within a few hours, basically, I noticed an extreme shift in the entire mode of posting, the mode of engagement that I was having online. Um, like within like literally 3 hours, I created the orange meme. That's my little orange in my profile picture, the divine orange. And this meme was taking off. We were handing the orange off to people's Milady profile pictures to put in their avatar. We created all this lore around it. And it was just completely ridiculous. And at that point, I realized that Milady was like this true accelerationist entity. It was lubricating the network when you follow the mode of posting that they tell you to do. Like remove your identity, enter the post identity, like mental schema, remove yourself from your online avatar, forget about authorship. All of these things, they lube the network up so much. And that's why I think you see this mass proliferation. And this mode reintroduced me to the beauty of the network. And it made me very excited. So that's why. And eventually, someone gave me a Milady, which was also amazing, just for my service, I guess. So.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for that story. That's revealing. And Lucas, do you have anything to add to this question? Oh, you're mute. You have to unmute your mic, by the way. I see we have Ryder Rips is in the chat. And real quick, while Lucas is unmuting his mic, I'll take a quick question in the chat here. People are saying, of course, no females. Well, yeah, this was honestly just a random sample. I didn't want to give you some cornely diversified group where I'm like going out and handpicking, looking for like a female representative of the Milady community. I literally just picked, 4 Milady avatars. So it is what it is. But yeah, Lucas, did you want to add?
Yeah, I kind of had, I think, an unusual initiation to the Milady thing too. I was just friends with Charlie and the gang, and then when they first did it, I set it as my profile picture. And I was kind of like, this thing looks it's a little unsettling. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan. It's kind of weird, but it was kind of fun. It like enabled like a sort of fun, like performative, innocent little child posting. Like I did a bunch of like very like confused. I don't know, just like a little kid being like consistently surprised or horrified by just like big things in the world jumping out and like attacking him, or like really unfortunate, like just a horrible series of like a Rube Goldberg machine of like the entire universe conspiring to just like have the worst possible thing happen to this guy. And so I liked it, and I think it's fun. I've kept it because it's fun to post with.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a rough consensus around the aesthetic and intellectual or political or ideological, ethical appeal of Milady. It seems like you all more or less agree that it represents this kind of egregore that allows individuals to plug in and essentially escape from the overly saccharine, fake, corny consensus and status quo kind of NFT culture. It represented something fundamentally new and different that had much more to do with kind of the radical core of true artistic creativity of genuinely unconstrained, ungoverned, collective, distributed cultural creativity, and that might mean that it's dangerous, right? That almost implicitly brings a certain amount of danger. All authentic art historically has an element of danger. True ungovernable art is an intrinsically, dangerous thing, I would say. And so that's what I talked about in my initial thesis. It sounds like a lot of people are saying a similar thing. So that's interesting. Now let's talk a little bit about the recent news and what's going on with all of this. So to kick this off, I'll just add some context that I have. So I think most people who are kind of in the internet underground know about Mia. Mia was a legendary kind of Twitter account mostly. I think they had presence on other networks, but I think it was best known for the Twitter account, Mia, aka the BPD God. And my memory of the Mia moment, it was shut down after a certain point, and Mia just disappeared. But my memory of Mia, having watched it and having been, active on the internet underground at that time, as I still am, as the Other Life podcast, kind of continues to represent in a way. I always understood it as performance art. Personally, I think it was fairly well known. Actually, I think it was how it was generally interpreted as performance art. It was, for people who don't know what we're talking about, it was basically insane, excessive schizo posting. It was like such a kind of violent, aggressive, crazy. It was crazy racism. It was crazy, endorsements of violence and things like this. I took it at the time, and I believe, I could be wrong, I want people to correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory of it was understood as just like this insane, over the top performance art, essentially, because it was so crazy that it was like, it was almost too crazy to actually be like an evil person doing evil things, because evil people doing evil things don't talk like that, and they don't publicize it in that way. And it was like such a scale and such an intensity. I understood at the time, and I think most people in the know understood at the time, that it was basically performance art. And then, looking from the outside, it just kind of disappeared, went away. It was this legendary kind of account and this legendary moment of like the Twitter underground or whatever. That's my memory. Just as in the interest of fact finding and explaining things step by step. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Am I wrong? Do you have a different wrinkle or context before we move on and continue painting out this picture of what's really happened?
No, that was definitely how I perceived Mia. I think how pretty much everybody else in the sphere. I was in kind of like an adjacent sphere, and my main interaction with Mia and like the surrounding people was mostly watching all of my friends get religiously punked on by all these people who just like trolled them into the ground. It was like really, really embarrassing on a consistent basis. And that was kind of like what the whole thing with the sphere was for them, was just like there was this really big growing, like burgeoning trad sphere, right? Like the traditional Catholics, they return to tradition, that type of people. And one of their things that they like to do was glorify that period in all of the positives. Like, oh yeah, we want like the submissive trad wives and the wheat fields and stuff like that. But they would always leave out the negatives. And so something really funny that Mia did was say like, I am more traditional than all. I am the true trad. I support not only the submissive trad wives and the wheat fields, but also all of the dark sides, like the child labor and like the weird like slavery caste and the plebes tending to the fields and stuff like that. All of this is good. And you just went out there on a limb and said like, you have to take all of it, and you guys are LARPing. And if you like, all of this stuff verifiably is what happened traditionally. So if you're saying you're trad, you've got to endorse all of it. You can't just pick the good.
Right. So it was like this kind of aesthetic acceleration of a lot that's wrong with the internet to such an insane degree that it was like a kind of auto critique of the internet in a way. I think a lot of it was ironic and over the top, trying to kind of draw to its insane maximum things that were already normal. Like, so for instance, and this gets relevant for the analysis here, like there was a Discord community and they definitely did like crazy stuff. And this is what the researchers who kind of tried to cancel or are trying to cancel Milady, this is what they seized on, right? They found screenshots of all kinds of crazy stuff. And like in the Discord, there were people like Mia and these people, whatever, who some of whom were to some degree, we'll try to kind of sort out, have some non-trivial overlap with the Remco founders and the founders behind Milady. They would say things like talk about suicide and talk about like anorexia and stuff like that. So they would say things that were like really pretty crazy, right? I do believe that's true. I could be wrong, but I do believe that's true. The wrinkle that like normie people are not able to grapple with right now, and that crypto Twitter is not able to grapple with right now, is, as far as I can tell, it was overwhelmingly art. And even in the Discord at a collective level, it was this kind of like collectivization of schizoid art, where everyone, a bunch of people, the whole group was kind of like saying this crazy stuff to each other in this kind of egregore, right? And so look, you can question whether that's good or bad or not, for sure, right? That sounds extremely dangerous. Perhaps it's extremely irresponsible. So I'm not necessarily here to, applaud it ethically or something like that. But it is a relevant distinction to make between that as a kind of crazy, irresponsible, collective, distributed art project, essentially, versus literally calling it or alleging that it was a literal Nazi pro-anorexia suicide cult. Like, these are just different things, right? Or are they not? How do you all think about that? Or what can we say about that?
Yeah, so there's some question. Like, what's the difference between these things that really exist in reality? So, like, pro-ana forums exist in reality, suicide forums exist in reality. Or by reality, I mean, in the faith, like they're adhering to the faith of suicide or pro-ana or whatever on these forums. But I wasn't there for Mia, so I'm only giving sort of an outside interpretation. But it seems like the revelation of the absurdity of these things was important in Mia. So because they were taking these ideas to some extreme logical conclusion, there was no sort of fringe forum that was off limits. So like a lot of those screen caps, they show sort of a very absurd version, almost like a clear caricature of these things that they're touching on, at least in the public posts that I saw. So in some sense, if I was stuck in one of those forums, and as someone that was misguided, I wonder if, I would see the absurdity through
Right.
seeing some of those posts.
Right. Anyone else want to chime in on this? I mean, one way to pose the question, if it's helpful, is like, as you all like Milady and you identify with Milady and you enjoy it and believe in the project to some degree, you're invested in it, whether that's, financially or psychologically or both, aesthetically, or both. How do you parse the Mia stuff and what's unsavory about that with the Milady artistic egregore? Like, do you just assert that there doesn't need to be any, it's just a relatively incidental thing that you're comfortable just separating and saying, I like Milady, I don't like that stuff that was, maybe dangerous or irresponsible? Or just how do you, in your own personal case, think about this relationship between the unsavory Mia stuff and the stuff about Milady that you really like?
Yeah, so I guess I've been telling people that, people still watch the Weinstein Brothers movies. I don't know anyone that's actually boycotted those movies, and what he did was horrible. What they did to people, it was terrible, I think. And you can make the case that, in a sense, they're just eccentric people. But, the world is just built by, in some sense, just eccentric, batshit insane people. And, these people do crazy things. And I think one of the big things cancel culture gets wrong nowadays, not to bring it to this topic necessarily, but is that we're talking about this being tied to the Milady collection now, right? Like whatever Charlotte did or didn't do, I still like what the Milady collection, stood for in early crypto, right? And what it was and what the community of the posters, right? And now all that this stuff has come out, suddenly people want to just get away from Milady. And that just doesn't make any sense. And I think, it's a very dangerous idea to do that. Like,
right. So that's one position that I think is relatively coherent and compelling, right? You can just say, like, who cares what one person who was one of the founders of this thing did in the past, no matter how bad or evil it might be or whatever. You can kind of just say that doesn't matter for the quality and the significance and the meaning of whatever the Milady egregore is. You can just basically say, okay, that was bad, whatever, that was past, separate that out. We reject that and everything goes on. Do any of you think differently, or do you have a different framework, or what?
it seems to me like the kind of uh, overriding cultural force of the last couple of years has been this. Actually, let me back up. You may have seen a post by a Milady, a Substack post called "My Life as an Aesthetic Terrorist," which deals with this topic a lot. But I think the sort of overriding cultural force of the last few years has been the obliteration of the distinction between a representation of a thing and the thing itself. Like, you make a racist post is the same as being racist, or something to this effect. And I think the core kind of undigestible proposition on Milady is that force of innocence, this like childlike affect that it brings to the table, such that when you see a Milady's post, and you've never seen one before, your first thought is, oh, that's kind of cute, and then you see something completely unhinged, and there's just no way to react to that. In particular, if you're the kind of person who will look at something and say, saying these words is as bad as doing a bad thing, then it's like swallowing a toothpick, And I think that's the kind of core feature of this artwork is to like force toothpicks down everybody's throat.
Right. Fascinating. Anyone want to add to that? I mean, something we could actually talk a little bit about is some of the specific allegations, because if you actually look into these research threads, the people like, I think there were a few crypto Twitter influencers who more or less at the same time kind of came out with these Twitter threads aggressively trying to, kind of say Milady is evil and send the price to zero. It was people like Tetranode or like OX, NGMI were just two examples that I remember seeing. And you look through some of these like data, these are like data threads, like, connecting the dots with screenshots and all of this. If you actually look closely, a lot of this stuff that's actually bad, like, there's talk of suicides, for instance, or there's talk of people killing themselves based on this content. If you look closely, like that's actually linked to the System Space forum or something like that, which is tangentially linked to Mia, which, so it's like, if you actually look closely, it's a relatively tangential chain of linkages. As far as I can tell, technically, I don't know that there's any evidence yet, and there might be, but I don't know that there's any evidence marshaled by anyone that Mia or Mia's Discord actually did harm to anyone that we know of in any kind of like demonstrable way. That I do. Am I wrong? Does anyone know? But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be like.
I mean, I can't like guarantee that things that I haven't seen haven't gone on or anything like that. But like in the time that I've known these people, no, like it's all been, and like things do get confusing because like this isn't this article coming out. This happened already before. Like this specific cancel had already happened, and it had become like a recurring joke within the sphere. So they have started making jokes about like the grooming, or we are a pro-Anna cult, or like saying stuff like that in that vein, like kind of mocking the previous cancel. And then that screenshots of like them mocking the previous cancel are then being presented as unironic evidence of, oh, this is what's going on here. They're saying it directly. Like it's totally, they're in the group chat talking about we are a pro-Anna cult or whatever, which is just like, it does like, yeah, I understand why people would say that on like first pass, first inspection. It makes sense. But like, when you think about it a little bit more, like there aren't very many cults that say like, we are a cult, like we are forcing you to do this thing
in public, right?
Yeah. Like it's usually a little bit of a subtle, nuanced thing, I think.
Yeah. So, okay. So, right, you make an important point. To be clear, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. So, I'm definitely not, here to say Mia and the Discord community around Mia never hurt anyone. I honestly don't know. All I'm saying is that if you look at the evidence that has been marshaled by the detractors and the denunciators, it's the actually bad stuff, like an example of suicide or an example of, whatever, like the suicide being kind of like that's kind of like the craziest, like part of the allegation that they were instigating suicide. It wasn't actually the Mia Discord wasn't didn't instigate the suicide. It was like a linkage to System Space, which was like a kind of suicide forum or something like that. This is like crazy, deep internet, dark, internet underground stuff. Okay, so I'm just saying that as far as I can tell, I have not seen direct evidence that the Mia Discord actually did harm to people. You can find screenshots that the Discord community was saying like really crazy, violent, harmful stuff, but it looks like a kind of ironic group level kind of like ironic memeing around just saying crazy stuff, like true free speech absolutism, a whole group saying crazy stuff, violent, harmful stuff, but like they're all just saying it kind of for fun. It's sort of like old school, like 4chan energy, basically, but for the Discord, Twitter era or something like that. Okay, so what else? So I think we're probably not going to like get to the bottom of like fact finding things here, so we shouldn't even try. I don't want to present this as some kind of like we're going to get to the absolute bottom of what the facts of the case are. I'm sure things will, whatever, who knows, it'll have to turn out, or like they'll have to be, I guess if there's really bad stuff, like there probably will be an investigation of some kind, won't there? Like, I don't know. Anyway, it's not our job to get to the bottom of like fact finding.
Yeah,
so
I guess just like none of us know these things, people go on podcasts all the time and talk about these things. Like we really don't know at the end of the day. And like with the harm and effect that was caused, I think. But the most important thing is, as somebody said in the chat, separate the art from the artist, right? The collection stood for something excellent. And I think it still does. It's interesting. And whatever Charlotte did or didn't do, and the Discord, whoever was harmed, I mean, this is totally separate from what the collection originally stood for. That is the most important point to be made here. And I don't know, what happened in the Discord. I've seen some screenshots and the girls were pretty young. But yeah, didn't mean to cut you off there, Justin, but I think that's the most important thing with reference to the Milady collection.
Yeah, I think that's the right point. I think like I'm trying to be respectful of the gravity of the stakes and to be sensitive to the fact that like, wrong could be done in these communities, and I'm not here to defend it. I'm just saying, but I'm also trying to like acknowledge that, as you're saying, that's not really the focus of this anyway. Like I would feel remiss to not address it and just talk about it and see what we can say about it. But I think you're also right to note that it's not the essential question from the perspective of, what is art, what is valuable art, what type of art has value and should have value in crypto or otherwise over the long term, and the relationship between art and the bad or unethical or whatever behaviors of perhaps the authors of art. Like I tweeted the other day that in my perspective, I kind of see Milady as the net art version of, kind of like what Celine is to the novel, or, what the Marquis de Sade is to political theory, or, perhaps what George Bataille is to philosophy, or, you could think of other examples of, extremely transgressive individuals who say extremely bad things and perhaps do extremely bad things. But we can still value their art. And it seems like as a society, artworks that are done by really bad people can retain long-term value. And so it seems like as a society, we do actually acknowledge that difference. And so why should we not in the crypto community? So, okay. So I think the most interesting next question to take this to is, how do you all see the prospects for Milady as an NFT set? Is Milady now just tarred and feathered, and whatever nuances you might add to the discussion, it's kind of just doomed. It's going to zero and it'll stay at zero forever. Or do you all think that there's another future? Like, because one kind of contrarian position right now would be that all of this brouhaha, all of this kind of smear and craziness, and people kind of over aggressively trying to tarnish the Milady aesthetic brand with perhaps some wrongdoing on the part of someone somewhere who had something to do with making it all, is actually going to just basically increase the lore, increase increase the mind share in the long run and really cement Milady as a kind of truly deeply countercultural blue chip brand in all of the crypto space over the long term. I kind of think that. I'm not fully convinced. I do think, unfortunately, it's possible that, you know, like if OpenSea delists them, for instance, it's possible the Milady NFT set just goes to zero and kind of falls away forever. I think that's conceivable for sure. But do you think that's going to happen? Do you think that the Milady brand lives on? How do you all think about it?
Certainly
I
possible.
haven't really thought about price action at all.
Say it again.
Calibri or
Oh,
okay.
no, you go. Go ahead, Lucas.
I honestly haven't really thought about price action at all the whole time. And you bringing this up now is kind of the first I'm thinking about. And like, I agree. There's probably two. It could either slow rug to zero, or it can keep going up and kind of piggyback off this, springboard off things. I think it all kind of depends on what Remelia does, right? Like if they do a bunch of things that causes the community to think that they're insincere actors, that they never cared about the art, that they're just grifters, stuff like that, then it's going to have a negative effect on stuff. But if they keep pumping out projects, then I think that's going to be good. Like I think they have to win back community sentiment here, but I mean, they did it once, so I don't think it's impossible. Like I think the Milady community forming was a product of what they were doing already. Like I don't think it was just like this random thing that occurred. So I think if you've done it once, you can do it again.
Okay. And I mean, I guess just because they're going to be like journalists listening to this and that kind of thing. So I guess like for the record, we should make emphatically clear for people who are not like up on any of this. There's not really any allegations at all that the Milady community did anything bad. There's not any allegations that even Charlotte Fang and the controversial founders of the Milady project, there's not, to my knowledge, any allegations of even those people doing anything bad in this current moment of Milady. For the extent of the Milady project, there's really no allegations of anything bad being done or happening for the lifespan of the Milady project in any degree. Am I right about that, or am I?
I don't care enough to look into it.
Yeah, that's my knowledge. That's my knowledge.
You're correct. They're totally separate. I mean, that's why Charlie, he said in his post, you know, why none of this came up is because the goal was to make sure that they were two totally separate things.
Right. Okay. So, what about the rest of you? Do you have thoughts on, you know, how do we think about the economic value of the Milady NFT set given all of this? Does it have prospects? Is it doomed? What do you think? I'm just curious.
I was going to say almost exactly what Lucas said, which is that, you know, the remarkable thing about it is that if you don't actually give a shit whether it has value or not, then it becomes more valuable. If you actually just like it, and that's me. I wasn't around for Mia. I'm not in with the Remelia crowd. I like schizo posting. It's fun, and it's much more entertaining than trying to have like a Twitter profile with my real face on it or whatever. Although I guess that's what I have now. If it has an aesthetic value, or if it has even, I mean, you could call this a utilitarian value if it has a utility to you in that it gives you this kind of freedom by sort of somehow making you feel more like an anon, then it has some value. And I think people will continue to care about that, although I don't know for sure. It could go to zero. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right. So if you look at the metrics on the Milady NFT set, I'll share the screen right here. I think you all can see that. It's interesting. The price tanked when all this controversy hit, but it's not like there was a massive sell-off. If you actually look at the number of unique holders, which is this graph here, it's pretty much stayed the same. It dipped a little bit, but then it actually increased in the past few days. And so, you know, if you look at the price, you might think, oh my God, everyone's fleeing from the Milady community. But if you look at the actual number of people who are holding a Milady, the number has not actually decreased at all, only slightly. And so, you know, I think that's kind of interesting, I think. Because I think a lot of people out there are going to be like, I don't want to hold a Milady, or I'm not going to get into Milady. I'm not going to buy a Milady just because it feels icky to them that like there's any public association with like bad controversial stuff of any kind. Just for a lot of people, it's going to feel icky, and like they're just not going to want to, you know, own an NFT that is even associated with anything bad. But I don't know. I'm a little bit like I actually think the prospects for Milady as a brand are more favorable perhaps than people think, because the sentiment I'm hearing from a lot of people is like people are kind of taking for granted that this is doomed. It's like all over, but it's not obvious to me, honestly.
Yeah. So so I have a take on this. Like, if you go back through the timeline, sort of when I joined in March was like, to me, like it felt like a renaissance of schizo posting, as the price was beginning to go up, because I think crypto influencers in Wales were looking at it as something like, oh, this has a culture, this has some value that we can capitalize on. And then sort of as time went on, more sort of crypto people and like sort of I don't want to say normies, but like people that maybe didn't mesh entirely with the initial ethos start looking at it as an NFT financial asset. When a lot of the original community, it didn't even mint out for like 6 months or something. People didn't even really view it in a financial set when they were um, doing this schizo post, this Milady posting. And now you see kind of like the culture beginning to harden again, as a lot of people who maybe don't understand these allegations, aren't maybe so familiar with art, they start to jump out, and but there's like the schizoposing kind of looks like it's back on the timeline, which I find interesting. But the question is, how much of the values of NFTs are actually linked to culture? Like, how much of it is just like these influencers that everyone's following, pumping and dumping and running all these shills just to like inflate these assets to make some money off of people. So where the price hardens, I have no idea. I'm not that familiar, but the culture is
Right.
definitely hardening.
Okay, interesting. Anyone have takes on that or a different angle? I mean, the way I think about it is, yeah, we still don't know what NFTs are really. It's all still open. It's rather mysterious really, like what an NFT asset is in terms of what gives it value and what types of NFTs will retain value, if any at all. But I tend to think, and the way I think about it is that cultural entities do have economic value. They always have over time in all of history. There's always been a kind of latent economic value of any cultural entity, whether it's a brand, it's a community, an individual's name, or whatever you name it. Like there is always a hidden economic value to any cultural entity, but we've never been able to measure it before. And that's what's new and interesting about NFTs is it gives us this ability to basically gauge the economic value of any number of discrete entities. And I tend to think that NFTs will retain value over time to the degree that they represent something valuable, basically. I guess it's almost tautological, but that's how I kind of think about it. And so to me, the art that is most genuinely valuable is often transgressive in some way. It's like, saying things that everyone agrees with and that no one dislikes. That's not really valuable as an artistic gesture because it doesn't really add that much information. But when you say things or put things out into the public sphere, whether those are images or sounds or words or what have you, and they represent something that is in fact true. You're saying something that is in fact true about the world, or giving body to something that is in fact real that people really dislike. That's actually some of the most valuable art in the world, precisely because it's so hard to say. It's so hard to have the courage to put that out there. It's so hard to represent, and it's so dangerous and punished. It's so generally punished to represent that which is real and that which is true, but that which is also disliked or hated. And that's how I tend to think about transgressive art. That's how I tend to think about the economic value of transgressive art. And so, this might just be hopium though. I might just be, pumping my own bags, or this might just be bag bias. I want to believe that, Milady is going to get out of this and retain its value and appreciate over time, because Milady, for the past several months, like Milady it's hard to describe for people who like don't know what we're talking about, but Milady was like the first NFT where like cool people who I actually admired, who I thought were cool, who I fucked with for real and authentically, were like rocking NFTs and talking about a certain NFT and kind of identifying with a certain NFT and being pumped on a certain NFT. It was the first time that cool people who I actually genuinely thought were cool were kind of rallying around it and being like kind of inspired by it and talking about it and having fun with it in a way. And that's to me what was authentic and real about it. And so it's like I don't know. I just don't want to. I don't want to like harp on it. Like I'm not like obsessed with Milady or something. It's not like a major part of my life or something like that. But on the other hand, I don't want to just like give it up and let it disappear just because some crypto influencers said it was naughty. Like that's what I'm motivated by. That's why I'm here today, and that's why I wanted to do this podcast. It's like it's not that Milady is like the end all be all of something incredibly epic and amazing, with world historical significance. It's more like the ability for two people on Twitter to destroy it because they accuse it of being naughty. That's the thing that I hate, and that's the thing that I'm like motivated to try to, not submit to. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has any other reflections or observations around this question of like what is art, what is valuable, what should retain value over time, and what shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up this idea of assigning economic value to cultural entities, and I think that's sort of, in some sense, that's more than even like the art, which is different from anything else in the space. I think that's what distinguishes or what's novel about this thing. Not just the NFTs, but the whole, I mean, like metacultural complex around it. If you look at the history of it, the Milady avatars, the artist who made them started making them just for this circle of friends, before the idea even came up to turn it into an NFT collection. And what sort of happens is that, by turning it into this asset that has some kind of economic behavior, you associate the culture that this little in-group had with this, image. And you create this kind of complex that is, economic. It has an economic value. I don't know that it provides value, but it is valued in some sense or evaluated. And I think the culture coming before the actual like collection is something that no other NFT has actually even accomplished or attempted yet. And I would describe Milady more than anything as an attempt to gestate a subculture and then let it loose into the world where it can be an independent entity, rather than just being confined to this, small circle of friends. And I think it worked.
Yeah, just to add to your earlier point, like I said, I'm an engineer. I've had the pleasure of working with some very, very, very talented people in the crypto space, and there are a lot of people who had Milady as their profile picture, like internally behind closed doors. And so I think it kind of, again, it signaled like, and it still does signal this like kind of what everyone was thinking, right, with the crypto space. Like everything seems a little bit, silly, a little bit ridiculous, and finally this like more honest, just straight transgressive collection comes along, right? And I think the community will live on, right? But like the price, that's different than saying like, oh, what price will it reach, right? Because clearly we see the number of holders. You showed the graph earlier, the number of holders didn't change, right? But the price dropped significantly because whales are offloading, collections. So that's all, unfortunately, that's all in NFTs. You need to lose a lot of the value. So the value will always stick around. I think Milady's will always have a big community. Whether or not that means it's worth 0.25 ETH or 2 ETH, I have no idea. Nobody really knows. I mean, that depends how many people in the community have money and are willing to pick up a bunch of Miladys. And, I own some, but, and I love the community dearly, but, we'll see. I think none of us really know. But
LB Dobus, Lucas, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with both the things they said. I think this like separation of what is like, we don't even know what the value of a culture is that's attached to an NFT. Like, this is, I think Milady is, I don't know if this is true, but it seems like the first NFT that sort of started with culture. Like the culture began and was like generated, and then as people noticed the culture, that's when they started to buy in. Sort of a to go bullish on cultural value being attached to NFTs. I think that whatever plays out next, because I think that the culture will be there. Like it's going to stick around. Like this mode of posting, this mode of interacting with the internet, will form this digital tribe around Milady. It's going to stick around, and we'll find out, I guess, like what it means to like whether cultural value can make up the majority of an NFT's price. But I'm a bit skeptical on it.
Sure. Lucas, anything to add?
Yeah, I think something that's kind of important to understand to contextualize any of this is that Milady was, I don't want to say it was the only NFT collection that did this, but it minted and it got maybe a third of the way to mint out, and then it just totally stopped. and there was basically no activity on Milady for like 6 months. The floor dropped to like, I don't know. There were points where it was like 10% of mint price or something like tiny like that, right? So it was essentially free for everybody who wanted to pick one up on OpenSea. If you wanted to, like, nobody really wanted to mint them even for that long period there. And then it was entirely saved because there were people who had the avatar that created a community that people wanted to join. Like, it was made purely by the culture and shipped on that culture. So in order to like, it wasn't like the other ones of like, oh, you're gonna buy this at this given price and you're gonna bag hold it until wherever. It was like, if you wanted a cheap Milady, basically a free Milady. I mean, they were like giving the things away for so long too. Like, it wasn't a thing of, oh, like, we're gonna be really stingy with our NFT collection that hasn't minted out, and we still have all of these people who are listing on OpenSea for basically nothing. Like, anyone who they thought was cool, anyone who they were friends with, they were just kind of, here you go, bro.
Right.
So
right.
I think without like that kind of contextualizes for me the sense that it wasn't like a big, oh, you're gonna buy this for 5 ETH, but it'll probably go to 10 ETH, bro. Like, it was like very much so like a ground level organic thing.
Right. That's a great point. It really is an important point, actually. Almost all of the NFT sets are these things that they're really, like, let's just face it, they were pretexts for making money, basically. It was like, you have the idea and the desire to make money. That's the starting point. And then, like, the art or the concept comes second as just like a vehicle for doing that. But what Young Clebri and Lucas, what you're both saying is basically what was unique about Milady is that it was actually just a certain subculture, an artist making these pictures within their subculture, within their community. And then it slowly started to, kind of gather and accumulate this like cultural liquidity, basically, through NFT as the mechanism for creating that liquidity. But it wasn't some people who set out to like make a lot of money with NFTs as the primary motive, and that's, I think, an important wrinkle here.
I think another really big thing too was that during that 6-month period where the project, like, an NFT project that doesn't mint out within the first couple weeks or so, generally is considered by the community to be totally failed, right? And at any point, Remilia could have just ran away. They could have said, okay, we got our whatever, like our 3,000 that sold, we can take the bag and run away. But they actually kept doing stuff. Like, they started hosting the raves, they started organizing like a fashion line, they started actually continuing to build with community funds. And I think that's another like pretty, like, that buys a lot of good faith with me, right? Like, they had all of the opportunity in the world to just run away and do whatever they wanted with the money, and they didn't, and they stuck with it. So that's a big, like, it's kind of rare. That's big for me.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, okay, I mean, I feel like we covered a lot of ground. I feel like those were the main topics or questions that I wanted to cover. I mean, if there's anything that people think is relevant about Milady or about the current situation and everything that you want, that I didn't ask about, that you want to get on the agenda, I would love to just open the floor. People can throw on any points or observations that they want. Is there anything, or maybe we'll move towards wrapping? Any outstanding thoughts or observations we didn't cover yet?
I would say we talked a little bit about what's kind of novel about this. I'm not even sure how to identify it, but this sort of nexus of a culture and an image, and I mean, particularly, like, as it's enabled by this new kind of financial or asset mechanism. And I think the crucial thing is that this is not the last time that this will happen. It's not even close. There will be other cultures that represent themselves to the world in this way, and that provide this kind of, I mean, you can call it an incentive if you want. If you look at what Charlotte has, said publicly in I don't know, discords or old tweets about how Milady is supposed to quote unquote work, like, it is in some sense a financial incentive for people to participate in a community. But the thing is that the financial incentive is not as important as the community. It's all just gravy, and that is a genuinely new sort of way of framing the way that you interact with people on the internet, and it's not going to go away. There's going to be more like this.
Okay.
Yeah, like people were encouraged to just right click save one. It was never like a buy your way in thing, right? Like it wasn't like a Bored Apes, like intellectual property. Oh my God, you stole my picture. If you use this without permission, we'll sue you type thing. It was literally like go to the asset database and find one that you like if you want to join and just nab it.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone want? Maybe I'll give everyone an opportunity for closing words. How do you looking at all this from a bird's eye view? You don't have to if you've already expressed everything you have to express. Then no need to restate anything. But I'm curious if anyone wants to take a stab at a kind of summary, a kind of high level overview of how things look to you after we've talked about it. I guess I'll go first. From my part, it looks to me like this. It looks to me that this denunciation from a couple influential crypto Twitter people could possibly have the effect of more or less squelching the economic value of the Milady NFT set, especially if something like, if OpenSea delists them or something like that. There are these vulnerabilities in crypto infrastructure right now. There's a lot of centralization and there's a lot of over-indexing on influential characters. There's all this a lot of people do momentum trading where they're really just doing whatever they think everyone else is going to do. So there's a lot of inefficiencies and facts about the current state of the crypto market that makes these kinds of radical transgressive projects, very vulnerable. And so I think it's perfectly possible that, unfortunately, the Milady project is, in fact, killed by these denunciations. But objectively and substantively, from an ethical perspective, how do I think about Milady? The way it honestly looks to me at this point, having thought about it from my own perspective, but also having talked with this random sampling of Milady avatars in my sphere, it looks to me like, I think the Mia phenomenon was incredibly dangerous. It was incredibly provocative. It was, I think you could very well say it was perhaps irresponsible, but I also do just think that, art has a tendency to become dangerous, to become almost irresponsible. And that I do think that, free speech and true kind of artistic freedom maximalism does basically require, at certain limits, at certain times and places, it requires artistry to go to the limit. And that is going to be dangerous. It is going to be, at the edge of responsible and irresponsible. Perhaps it's going to be outright disgusting or outright horrific or outright extremely irresponsible. I do tend to think that, that is within the remit of what art is. And so long as I don't have evidence that Mia or the Mia Discord community, actually did direct harm to a victim or a set of victims, short of actual data and evidence of that, I personally do not take screenshots of extremely dangerous and irresponsible and nasty or violent speech. I do not take screenshots of that as evidence that something is intrinsically evil, because I do believe that a certain realm of extremely transgressive art can be justified as art if there are no, proven victims of it. I guess that is how I think about it. I'll have to sleep on that. I'm not wedded to any position. It could absolutely come to light that there was way worse stuff going on than what I've seen, and in fact it was awful and truly deeply evil, and a lot of people were harmed. In which case, I might change my tune and I might say oh, actually, all of this is just so contaminated that I just can't stomach any kind of association. I think that's also people can make that personal judgment call, and I think for a lot of people they would just say oh yeah, philosophy and philosophy of aesthetics and all of that aside, this just feels icky to me, and I don't want to, I can't stomach it. I think that's that is a position someone might take, and I think that's, if that's your personal feeling, that's fair enough as well, I think. But from what I can see.
Let me add that you should stop watching Weinstein Brothers movies as well. You should stop watching Ren and Stimpy and Adventure, and basically probably half the cartoons
Right.
you've ever seen, right? And it's like, people do bad things. It doesn't mean we should cancel the art. So don't find someone who
Right.
doesn't watch the Weinstein Brothers films. I haven't ever met a person like that. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
Right. Right. Please.
Okay, something I was going to say. I was thinking about throw this about Mia was that there's like an irony here to the fact that Mia would do these sort of performative cancellations all the time, or she would make these kinds of jokes where she would fabricate, you know, make fabrications of screenshots or fabrications of like all kinds of things as a troll. It was all a very elaborate troll. Just like my outside observation was, I just found it interesting to see like that type of screenshot cancellation like come back to haunt Milady, to haunt Mia in this era where, you know, Mia was trying to sort of make a commentary, it seemed, on like the sort of post-truth internet, and the fact that these things are so easily manipulable. That I just find it ironic that it's sort of come back to haunt Milady.
Yeah, I thought that one was
Yeah.
kind of funny too. Like I was kind of I was too new to Twitter at the time to really have been there for the full like Cali whatever thing. But from people that I've talked to, there have been some that have said that yeah, Mia did these like performative cancellations on themselves, and they made up screenshots, and some of the made up screenshots are like coming back to be used in like the real cancellation, which like I can't verify or anything that, but it sounds like it's fitting in the vein with everything else. Like it'd be kind of funny.
Right. So someone in the chat is talking about this right now. The one example people might have seen is a picture of a teenager with a swastika cut on her stomach, bleeding, and there's a sign next to her. She's holding a sign that says Kaliak. Kaliak, for people who don't know, refers to Kali Yuga accelerationism. And that was like one of the hashtags or whatever that was associated with Mia. And so the person in the chat is saying, is that not enough proof? Is that not enough proof? Well, here's the thing. And here's like why this is so important. People need to understand this is, we live in this age of cheap decontextualized images where anyone can basically make an image of anything for free. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that any particular case or example is true or false. I don't know. And I'm trying to be very sensitive and delicate about this. Like I'm not, I'm certainly not giving some kind of carte blanche, naive defense of Mia or the community around Mia or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that true art and artistic freedom and artistic expression is a genuine and important, crucial social value that does have to be defended. And we live in an age now where anyone can basically make an image of anything. And so the important point to me, this is the important point, is that for us as thinkers, as readers, as writers, as artists or creators or whatever, engaging and living on the internet in the digital age today, it is essential, it is absolutely crucial that we are not held hostage to whatever proliferation of images might arise and how those images are judged by certain, moralistic perspectives. Like my point is just simply that just because someone surfaces a screenshot of someone doing some bad thing at some point in history, I don't know. I don't have enough context for that image to know whether it's real or whether it's not. Whether it was an ironic self-denunciation, as some people in the conversation are talking about how Mia used to do that. I don't know, and I don't consider it my responsibility to have to know. I think this is like a really important point, because if you say that the criterion for what is allowable art and what is an NFT egregore or community that you are allowed to ethically and good conscience participate in, if that line is defined by like what someone on the internet is able to produce an image of and show to be like ethically problematic, art is done. Art is over. If that's your bar, art is completely over. And so my point is just, I refuse to be held hostage by people who take screenshots of who knows what. I refuse to be held hostage by that, and I think that's the crucial point. I think that people should not allow their sense of what is artistically allowable to be defined by like what someone on Twitter is able to furnish a screenshot of. That's my take. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that. I think we might have kind of like covered it. Does anyone have like, kind of any kind of closing remarks? So I would say that more or less summarizes my position, that I do agree with Addy that the artistic integrity and significance and meaning of Milady Maker is separable from whatever Mia might have been or was. And even if Mia was extremely evil and did extreme harm to many people, which it's not clear to me that is, although it's possible, it's not clear to me that it is. Even if that were the case, you can still say that you appreciate the value of the Milady art and the brand and the larger egregore. Yeah, what do you think? Have we covered all the necessary ground to the best of our ability?
Nobody gives a fuck about NFTs, man. Right click, save a Milady, and come post with us. It's fun.
Yeah, fuck NFTs.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for your time, and I think that's a wrap. So, yeah, I appreciate you all coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Justin.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for having us.
All right. That's a wrap. Go subscribe to the Other Life podcast. You can get it on wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and, subscribe and click the little bell so you get notified next time we go live. Thanks, everyone. Later.